Jessica Leichtweisz, CEO of Hope Education Services. It is Friday, September 14th. First off, we just wanted to give prayers to everybody on the East Coast United States affected by the hurricane passing through. We want to let you know as a company you are in our thoughts and prayers. I wanted to cover this important topic today. So this has come up several times this week. Many people know if you're on this channel, I'm an autism behavior expert and consultant. So what I do a lot of times is I'll go into homes, I'll work with kids and I'll go to look at programs other therapists put together, explain to parents, and try to help figure out what's working and what's not working. So this came up 3 times this week, and that's why I'm making this Facebook Live. Now, oftentimes therapists, they tell parents when they're using extinction, which means in an ABA terms, you're not letting a behavior work, essentially, to ignore the child or use planned ignoring. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about what planned ignoring is and why when you're using planned ignoring, you're not actually ignoring your child. So in ABA, what we have a procedure called extinction. So what that means is that when you don't let a behavior that you don't want to see happen again achieve its function. So in ABA, anytime a behavior occurs, if it's reinforced, it's more likely to occur again. So the opposite of being reinforced is not actually to be punished, it's to be extinguished, which means to not be reinforced. So that may be really confusing. Here's an example. So let's say that you are on the phone with your child and your child is saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," and pulling out your leg. And you turn around and you're like, "What?" You're reinforcing that behavior, right? They got your attention by saying, "Mommy, mommy." It worked, right? So let's give another example. Let's say your child wants a cookie and they're sitting at the bottom of the refrigerator and they're screaming, "Ah!" and you give them a cookie. Then automatically that behavior was reinforced. So they're more likely to scream at the refrigerator again the next time they want a cookie. So what do you do to avoid that? Well, you would do something called extinction. So extinction means you essentially don't give them the cookie or you don't give them attention. Now in ABA, the way we figure out what extinction looks like, the way we figured out what it looks like to not reinforce a behavior, it depends on what that behavior's function is. So why is the child engaging in the behavior? In the first example I gave, when your child is tugging and pulling at you and screaming "mommy" when you're on their phone, they're engaging on the behavior because they want your attention. So the way that you would not give them, not reinforce the behavior would be to not attend to them, to not give them attention as a result of that behavior. So that's what extinction looks like. And that's where planned ignoring comes in. The idea that you already know your child may engage in a behavior that you don't want to see, and that you're choosing ahead of time that you're going to ignore that behavior when it occurs. Now, ignoring a behavior is not the same thing as ignoring a child. Ignoring a behavior simply lets a child know this is not a way to communicate with me. So let's say, your child is having a tantrum and, your therapists are telling you, ignore it when they're having a tantrum. You're not ignoring the child when they're having a tantrum. Oftentimes when a child is engaging in a tantrum, they're engaging in unsafe behaviors. Either they're banging their head, maybe they're throwing things, they're going to break something. A lot of times they're hitting the parents. So I see oftentimes, and I saw this twice this week, where the therapist told the parents, okay, ignore your child when they're engaging in a tantrum or engaging in aggression, ignore the child. So the child is like hitting them and the parents are letting them hit them. And I'm saying, like, why are you letting your child hit you? And they're like, oh, well, we're using planned ignoring. It's on extinction. It's not really what it means. So what it means is you're not allowing the behavior to be a form of communication, so the child doesn't continue to engage in that behavior over and over and over, but you do still pay attention to your child. So when you hear extinction, when you hear planned ignoring, and I know I'm using them kind of interchangeably, and they often are used interchangeably, but when you're ignoring a behavior, do not ignore your child. Look at planned ignoring as you're ignoring the behavior, not the child. So if your child is banging your heads, parents are saying all the time, well, I can't ignore the tantrum because they're banging their head on the floor. Of course you don't ignore the fact that your child is banging their head on the floor. I mean, that would be ridiculous. You have to make sure that they're safe. It might look like putting them on the couch or putting a pillow behind them. So if they're hitting their head, they're hitting it on the pillow and they're not going to hurt themselves. The idea is that you're not going to give your child what they're crying about. So if they were crying because they wanted, access to their iPad and they're banging their head on the iPad, planned ignoring extinction means you're waiting until they calm down from crying to give them the iPad and having them ask in a more appropriate way. Maybe it's pointing to it. It doesn't mean that you're ignoring them bang their head on the floor where they could potentially hurting you. It doesn't mean if your child's hitting you that you're just gonna let them hit you because you're ignoring the behavior. You're gonna get up and maybe just walk away. So You do want to be really careful when a child is engaging in a tantrum and you are intervening with it, especially if it's a attention-seeking behavior. You want to avoid giving the child unnecessary attention. Now, there's ways you can do that. Number one is to make sure that any prompts that are occurring. So let's say you're working with a child. Let's say they're 3 years old and they're banging their head on the floor. You need to keep them safe. You want to actually be behind them so they can't see you and they can't see your reaction. That's one way to be really effective in dealing with making sure you're not avoiding unnecessary attention. The other thing you would want to do is limit your talking. So the more talking that you're doing, the more you're engaging with your child, the more you're interacting with your child, the more that you're going to be reinforcing that behavior and providing them attention for it. So again, the whole purpose of this, it really comes down to, it's not a punishment procedure. It comes down to making sure behavior doesn't achieve its function, making sure it doesn't work. The child has to know this is not a form of communication. So if you're saying, no, that's not nice, don't do that. No, Charlie, get up, come on, stand up, calm down, it's okay. If you're saying that over and over and over and over, you're communicating with the child. What you're actually teaching them is this isn't a form of communication. So that's where the idea of planned ignoring comes in, that you're limiting your interactions, you're limiting your facial expressions, you're limiting your consequences, and essentially you're really just waiting it out, waiting until they calm down, and then you would redirect them. We call it redirection, or DRI, the differential reinforcement of an incompatible behavior, which you would tell them to do the behavior that you want them to do. So let's say they were crying and tantruming because they wanted that iPad. You wait for them to calm down, make sure they're safe, make sure they're not breaking anything or hitting you. Once they calm down, then you'd ask them, if they're vocal, you can tell them to say iPad, and then you'll give it to them, or you'll have them point to it if they're non-vocal. So that, I hope that helps to answer your question and clear up any confusion around, what extinction is and what planned ignoring is, and why you're not actually ignoring your child. And I hope that makes it a little bit easier for you to use as a parent. No one's asking you to watch your child hurt themselves and to not intervene. So I really, really, really hope that was helpful. If you found this video helpful, I would just love for you to write in the comments something that you're taking away. I love the feedback on these videos. Also, if there is a question that you have, please write it in the comments of these videos. If you're watching this on YouTube, especially write down those comments in the YouTube videos. I monitor all of those comments, and I will make videos, and I do respond to all of the comments. If you have questions that you have as a parent, maybe something I said today is confusing, maybe there's another procedure your therapist asked you to do that you're a little bit confused about, write that question as a comment to this video, and I will respond to it. If you're on this and watching this on Facebook, I want you to head over to parenttrainingvideos.com. That's my YouTube channel. I create free content like this several times a week for you. It's my mission, my vision, to make sure every mother in the world knows how to help their child with autism. Every parent knows how to help their child. And I just want to get these videos out there. If you come across this for the very first time, you can head over to parenttrainingvideos.com. That's where you're going to be able to subscribe to this channel, and you're going to get all of that content. There's almost 100 videos on there just like this that'll really help you and your family. And on the opposite, if you're listening to this on YouTube and you want to find my Facebook page, I also put out blogs, I put out podcasts, I put out tons of other things. Head over to Hope Education Services. So it's just Facebook.com/Hope Education Services. Head over to our Facebook page, like it, and we'll make sure you never miss any of the content.